Flexbox last week. I'm super excited to show you my understanding of Flexbox. I went through training. I showed you my notes last week. It took like 126 pages of notes. I really think Flexbox is awesome. If you go to Can I Use, 96% of browsers support Flexbox. So I think when you look at the different ways that you could build websites, Flexbox is one of the big tools that you should be using. And it should be doing like vast majority of your digging, right? Occasionally you'll pull out some other little tool to get a little piece of dirt out of the way or whatever. That's my analogy. And but Flexbox should be doing your heavy lifting. All right, so for layout, just a little bit of a review. Layout essentials, we have the box model, right? And the box model is what? So we got content, it has padding, has a border, it has margin. And then we have box sizing border box. What's that do? What's box sizing border box do? Yeah, so as you change your padding and your border, the size of your thing on the page doesn't change, right? So box sizing border box makes it go squish in as opposed to expanding the size of your element. Then we had border radius, where we could round corners, and we also had margin 0 auto. And I threw both of those in there because when you set border radius, you're setting top, right, bottom, left. And when you're setting margin 0 auto, it's 0 auto. Well, that TRBL, right, the TRBL, top, right, bottom, left, that's if you have one setting, it applies to all four. If you have two settings, what's it apply to? Like if you had 0 auto, margin 0 auto, what's that applying to? Top and bottom is the 0, and the auto is what? Right and left, right? And then if you had four settings, 10 pixels, 20 pixels, 10 pixels, 30 pixels, what are each of those four applying to? Treble, TRBL, top, right, bottom, left, okay? And so then we looked at display. And so one of the big concepts for layout with web pages is block and inline. And those are display properties. So elements, by default, a lot of elements are either block or inline. Okay, so block takes up a whole line, fills out as much space as possible. So a new block level element takes up its own line, goes to a new line, that's block. Inline takes up as little space as possible, wraps around the element. So that's block and that's inline. Those are display properties. Elements have default display properties. We could override and change display properties using the property display and setting it equal to some value. What are the most common display properties we will use? There's 5 of them. Display inline, display block, inline block, none, and flex. Right? So we're going to be looking at flex. So then that was like layout essentials, the first chunk, and then layout essentials 2, second chunk. We have we have position. So what's position? We have position fixed, position relative, position absolute. So what's position fixed good for? Fix it, man. Just put it in one spot. It's like a thumbtack. Put this here and keep it here on the viewport, on the window. Top left corner, bottom right corner, bottom, footer. You could fix it, keep it there. That's it. Just stays there. Okay? And then what about relative? Relative to what? Itself. Relative to itself. Relative to itself, shift it. What are the 4 properties you use to shift something that has position relative? Bottom, right, and left. It's top, bottom, right, and left. Those are the 4 properties for position relative, okay? And also for fixed, so top, right, bottom, left, and also for absolute. So if we look at like MDN, CSS top, right? Top position of position, the position of positioned elements. Okay, and if we look at like position, right, and just look for a top. It says here, the top, right, bottom, left properties specify the position of positioned elements. Cool. Well, that's different from the trouble thing we were talking about, but it's still the top, right, bottom, left. Okay, but you have to set it with top right, bottom left with position. So that's like, I mean, web programming is a little bit sometimes like, you have to know the distinction between is it 6 cylinders or 4 cylinders or an 8 cylinder, like mechanics, right? You have to know the difference between top right, bottom left, and then those other things we were just talking about, margin, zero, auto, or border radius, which also takes TRBL settings, but in a slightly different way. So that's position. How many people this review is helpful to you? Cool. And then we have float. So what was float originally designed for? Yeah, you're going to float an image, and anything that's inline is going to wrap around it. So it takes out of normal document flow. So if you have block level elements, they're going to slide up under that. But anything that's inside those block level elements that's inline will wrap around it. It's a bit of a trip. Takes some time to work with to kind of get your head around it, right? But it's originally designed for floating images. We could float left, we could float right. And then if we want our neighborhood of float, the brotherhood and sisterhood of float, where the floats are all respecting each other's territory, right? If we want to have that brotherhood, neighborhood, sisterhood of float, that area be kind of treated like a block level element and not have other block level elements slide up under it, we have to do the clear deal. So on the next block level element, after all the things we've floated, clear them, right? And then that kind of doesn't make that thing slide up under it. I don't know if that made sense, but the examples are there. You could go look at them. So that's float. So we have position and we had float, and now we are on to Layout Essentials 3. Believe it or not, there's going to be a Layout Essentials 4 because we still have media queries. And this shows you the mechanics of Flexbox. And after this, I'm going to show you how to do layout with Flexbox. I haven't got to that yet. I can't remember exactly what we covered on, I don't even remember what day we covered it. Thursday? Last week? We looked at CSS tricks, right? You guys have seen this complete guide to Flexbox from CSS tricks. This is where you want to go if you're going to learn Flexbox. This is the best document in the world, maybe in the universe, probably in the universe, for understanding Flexbox. Because even if there are other civilizations, they probably have their own internet and World Wide Web. I doubt it's the same as ours. Unless there's like, well, we're getting into multiple universes and strange things. So on the left side of this document, we saw this last week, right? How many people say you saw this last week? Raise your hand. How many people say you did not? Okay, so the left side of the document is for the parent, the Flex container. The right side is for the children, the Flex items. So when you do Flexbox, you're going to have a container, and that container, you'll say display Flex, and that makes that a Flex container. And anything that's in that, the immediate direct children are Flex items, right? Are Flex items. So you'll have settings you could set for the container, which will impact the items that are in the container. And you'll have settings you could set for the items. So you could set settings for the items to do certain things. Okay, so that's the first thing. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a preview. When you set things for a container, right, it's impacting the items. When you set things on an item, it's referencing the container it's in. Because you could have a container that's holding containers. And so then you could set like a property on the outer container, or you could, I'll show you an example here. So we have a Flexbox container where we practice setting container settings. And we have Flexbox items where we practice setting item settings. So for practice setting item settings, there's 6 item settings, properties. There's 6 item properties for Flex items. Line self, order, Flex grow, Flex basis, Flex shrink, and Flex. Cool. For setting properties on the container, I'm going to tell them to you before I show them to you. There's display Flex, okay? And that makes a container a Flex container. I know visual learners here, visual learners. There's display Flex, so we're looking at the container, right? Remember this column over on the left side? That's the settings for the container. Column on the right side, settings for the items. So there's display flex, or there's also inline flex. Inline flex. So you can make it be an inline element, but with flex stuff going on inside of it, that container. I've never played with that. So that's on my list. It's my bucket list. That, and I want to go to Tibet. Those two things. So then we have flex direction. So flex direction is going to set the direction of all the items. We could have, and default is row. Row is default. And that picture says it all. We have a container, it's got items, we can lay them out in a row, we could do a row reverse, we could do a column, we could do a column reverse. How many people, you remember that from Thursday? Okay, cool. And then we have flex wrap. So we can make all of our items wrap or not wrap. You know, go to the next line if you run out of room. Or just jam in on the one line. And then we have flex flow. So flex flow is a shorthand for flex direction and flex wrap. So you could just say, hey, flex flow. And how do you remember that flex direction is the first one and flex wrap is the second setting? Because you're just going to see flex flow, and then you're going to type in flex flow, and you'll have to remember, oh, I got to type row wrap, or is it wrap row? How do you remember flex direction comes before flex wrap? What's your mnemonic device? Yeah, that's mine too. Direction is alphabetically before wrap. Okay? Yeah, I have to come up with those things. If you don't, cool. So when we set flex direction, that sets our primary axes. So flex direction is row. What is the direction of our primary axes? Horizontal or vertical? Horizontal. Primary axis a row. A row is horizontal. If we set flex direction column, our primary axis is what? Is vertical, right? That's the primary axis. That's important, and you'll see why in just 1 second. So here we have justify content. Justify content moves things around on the main axes. So if it's flex row, it's going to put things like left justification, right justification, full justification in Microsoft Word, right? If it's flex row, it'll put flex start puts things over on the left, flex end puts them over on the right, center, space between, right, and space around. That's justify content. Main axes. And then we have align items. And align items is on the cross axes. So if it's flex row, what is our cross axes? Is it horizontal or vertical? Flex direction row. The cross axes is what? Vertical. Right? Because flex direction row, the main axis is horizontal. And if the main axis is horizontal, we got one choice left for the cross axes. It's crossing vertical. So the cross axis is vertical. So if you want to arrange things on the vertical axes, then you use align items if you're flex direction row. So if I have flex direction column, and the pictures are going to throw you off here. What is my primary axis? Horizontal or vertical? Flex direction column. It's vertical. My primary axis is vertical. So what am I going to use? Am I going to use align items or justify content to move things along the vertical axes? Which one moves things along the main axes? Okay, so that's where you just got to throw those pictures away. Justify content moves things along the main axes. So if I have flex direction row, my main axis, or flex direction column, my main axis is vertical. And if I want to move things along the main axes, I use justify content. Justify content moves things along the main axes. If I want to put things at the bottom of the column, I need to use flex end, justify content flex end. Justify content moves things along the main axes. That's where you throw the pictures away. Quit looking at the pictures and trying to reconcile it in your head. The main thing you want to look at right now, justify content main axes. That's it. That's where the pictures will spin you. And then if I want to move things, and if I have flex direction column, my main axis is vertical, and then my cross axis is horizontal. If I want to move things along the cross axis for flex direction column, do I use justify content or do I use align items? Cross axes. Okay? And then the very last one we have is align content. And align content moves all of the container's lines. I don't know what the heck I just opened or how I did that. Align content moves all of the lines. Chunk them up, move them down, left, right, whatever. So let's see some of that in action. So I want to introduce those properties before I open this folder. And I'm just going to say them back to you. Just a review. Okay, so we have display flex. What's display flex do? Makes it a flex container, right? And that's just my own words. So I have some container elements containing other things. And in the CSS, I say on that container element, display flex. Now that container is a flex container, and all of the immediate direct children are flex items. So as I set container properties, they're going to influence those flex items. So my container properties are, I have flex direction. What are my choices for flex direction? We have row, we have column, we have row reverse, we have column reverse. So I have flex direction, I have flex wrap. What are my choices for flex wrap? Wrap and no wrap. And the default is no wrap. It defaults to no wrap. And it defaults to flex direction row. So if I don't set flex direction is automatically row. If I don't set flex wraps are automatically no wrap. And then there's flex flow. What's flex flow? What's flex flow? What is it? Flex flow is a shorthand for what? Direction and wrap. That's what you said. Okay, I wasn't computing that answer. Direction and wrap. Flex direction, flex wrap. Okay, so that's the shorthand for it. Cool. So what are my remaining container properties? We've done display flex, we've done flex direction, we've done flex wrap, and then there's flex flow, which is shorthand for flex direction and flex wrap. What are my remaining 3 container properties that I could set? Justify content, which is for the main axes or the cross axes? Main axes. And then what else? Align items. And main axes or cross axes? Cross axes. And what else? Align content. We didn't really go into that one. And that's cross axes too. So both the lines do cross axes. Okay? So let's see it in action. So I just want to say those properties back to you before I show you that, because there's display flex, flex direction, flex wrap, flex flow shorthand, justify content, align items, align content. Not that many. Okay? Not that many. However, the permutations on them, whoops, 41 files I put together. Okay? For different permutations. So here's flex wrap, right? Let's look at flex wrap. Let's look at flex direction and what we could do with flex direction. Here's the shorthand, flex flow. Here's justify content, right? Where I show you how it works with a row and a column, each of the settings. Okay? Here is align items, row and column, each of the settings. And here's align content, row and column, each of the settings. So if we look at our course document, there's Flexbox review right at the end, and that really summarizes the container properties. Okay? So display can be flex or inline flex. I didn't go into inline flex at all. Direction can be row, row reverse, column, column reverse. Flex wrap can be no wrap or wrap. Justify content can be flex start, flex end, center, space between, space around. So right there, if I do a row, there's 5 files. If I do column, row and column, that's 10, right? Align items, Another 5, flex start, flex end, center, stretch, and then baseline, right? So that's cross axes. And align content is, again, there's another, 6 there. Flex start, flex end, center, stretch, space between, space around. Stretch is the default on the line stuff. So I really think that this little deal is helpful right here. You might want to copy that and print it out, and as you're learning Flexbox, tape it to your desk or pin it to your wall by your computer, just so you can look at, oh yeah, the different ones. Knowing that this is main axes, knowing that this is cross axes, like that's a big chunk to understanding Flexbox. When I set something to row, my main axis is horizontal, my cross axis is vertical. When I set it to column, my main axis is vertical, my cross axis is horizontal. So let's look at some of them.
Is that in our notes?
Yeah, that's the course document, and you could get to the course document by going, I think it's linked somewhere on WebStorm or Blackboard, but here's the URL to the course document. R3CZXV. Anybody writing that down, say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Cool? All right. So here's just a bunch of divs. And then in my main CSS, I have a display flex, makes this container a flex box. So let me just put that side by side. So this container is now a flex box, display flex, right? So all of these are flex items. And anything I apply, a container property apply to that container, like flex direction, or flex wrap, or flex flow, or justify content, or align items, or align content, any properties I apply to that container will impact these items. So here we have flex flow. I could have also just said flex direction is row, and I could have said flex wrap is wrap. So these two properties here are identical to that shorthand. Okay? I think I'll leave it like this and get rid of the shorthand. And when I preview this page, it's that. So we saw this Thursday. Pretty cool. Now there's a little bit of magic going on there, and the magic is flex grow. Now that's an item property. You could have called this class anything you wanted. I called it item. We'll learn about item settings later. But if I didn't have that flex grow there, there's no growing going on. Okay? So I kind of like that as the first one. Let me make it let me showcase Flexbox. And, you know, that's nicer. That's mo better. So that's the first one. So now we can explore no wrap. So the same HTML file. And then here's our CSS. And we've got our container. And the container is display flex. And then, do I have any other flex properties here? Explicitly. Do I explicitly have any other flex properties? Width, no. Height, no. Margin, no. Border, no. Background color, no. Text align, center, no. Border, no. Display flex is my only one. So what's my flex direction? Here, let me help. So what's my flex direction? Row. And what's my flex wrap? No wrap. And what's my justify content? Right. And what's my align items? And my align content? So those are all by default. I don't have to set anything. Okay, so all I did was set display flex, and we're going to have row, no wrap. No wrapping. So that file is called flex wrap, no wrap. And then here's flex wrap, wrap. So my CSS, same HTML. I've got display flex and flex wrap, wrap. Width, height, margin, border, background, color, text align. It's not flex. Right? None of that's flex. All I'm doing now, the only difference is flex wrap. So wrap's pretty important. Cool. Set wrap. Let's wrap that stuff. And then the size and everything is all set by, you know, this stuff right there. The size of each div. So that's wrap. And we have wrap, no wrap. Wrap, no wrap. And we have wrap reverse. I forgot to include that one in my deals. Wrap reverse. Fix it up here too. Nobody's perfect. All right, I didn't really say that much about it up there. Cool. All right, so here's wrap reverse. Same HTML, and then just flex, wrap reverse. So I'm going to first launch wrap so we could see that. That's wrap. And then let's compare that to wrap reverse. So here's wrap. First item, 1, 2, 3. Wrap reversed. And first item, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kind of trippy. That's Flexbox. It's like, here are the different things you could do. Use it or don't use it.
Why would you use that, the reverse?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Maybe you're like publishing books in some place where, you know, in America we read top to bottom, left to right. And over in that country they read bottom to top, right to left. Or I don't know. Or you just want to, you know, people are playing a game and it just like changes things. I don't know. I'm just showing you the mechanics. So I can't really think about using wrap reverse either. All right, that's wrap reverse. So now we're going to look at flex direction. So this is pretty straightforward. Row, row reverse, column, column reverse. How many people are finding this helpful? Cool. So flex direction. This one is just display flex, flex wrap, wrap, flex direction, row, right? The next one's going to be row reverse, same CSS, same HTML. The next one will be column, and the next one will be column reverse. So let's just look at each of those individually. So here's row, kind of what we expect. One big row, and we have wrap on, so it's wrapping. That's the default row, but it would be no wrap. We said wrap. Here's a row reverse. So we started out with first and then 1, 2, 3. And first is now here. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So just instead of left to right, start going right to left. So maybe that'd be what you use for your Chinese book. Don't they read right to left? What's up?
How would you centers of things? So like the bottom box be in the middle, and like I think the margins on both sides are different.
That's a great question. So you want last item to be in the center?
Yeah.
And you want things to have equal margins over on the left and the right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's our primary axes? No. Are we on a row or a column?
Row.
Yeah, flex directions row. So our primary axis is horizontal. So if we want to shift things horizontally, we use which container property? Justify content. Shift things along the main axis. So justify content. So we could go look at justify content. And Fortunately, when we're dealing with a main axis, which is horizontal, the pictures correspond. So maybe space around might be something I want to do, because that would put all of the elements equal space around, and then that last element would just be like way out in the middle, equal space all around. That's pretty centered. And yeah, I think that would be the solution. I just do justify content space around. So let's check it out. So that is 06, main CSS, justify content space around. Main axes, justify content. Pretty sweet. That's not this example though, so see you. Here is a column. First item, counting down to the bottom. What do you think column reverse is going to look like? Last item, counting from the bottom up to 0, or whatever the heck you want to describe it as. Column reverse. Were there any other settings in that CSS column? Display flex, flex wrap, column reverse. We don't really have any wrapping going on there. It's just all the way down, right? Well, that's because things grow vertically in a browser kind of by default. What if we had said don't grow? Now we got some wrapping. And it's reverse. Is this the reverse one? I don't know which CSS I'm on. Yeah. Cool. You guys starting to get a little bit of a handle on it? You want me to keep going, or you want to take a break and code? Because I could give you a little like challenge based upon what you've learned so far. What do you want to do? And want to do a little code challenge? Raise your hand. And you want me to just keep rambling? Did you raise code challenge? You didn't vote either way? All right, we're going to do a little code challenge. So what I want you to code is I want you to create a bunch of divs. So I'm going to show you what you're going to code. Go up here to temp. So I'm going to create a bunch of divs. How do I create 10 divs with Emmett? Div times 10. Okay? And I'm going to put those inside a div. So div, then with 10 div children. You guys see that? Div with 10 div children. Okay? Kapow. And then I want you to give, these should have had a class. So class item. So that's your emmet to get your code. And this one is class container. So do that emmet right there. And then give your item divs, some width and height. So like 100 pixels each. Okay, so that they're taking up some space, and background color so that we could see them. And then just have them be all horizontally across and wrap and use justify content to center things and make them look nice. And if you want to, so I'll make little notes here about what you want to do. Your stuff should be horizontal row. It should wrap, and it should be centered. And if you want to add, so this is your container settings, properties. And this would be your item properties if you want to have a little fun. You want things to grow. So that's optional. And you can change this from 10 to 15 if you want a few more. But 10's probably good. All right, so code that up. Cool. So let's try coding this up. And I need div container and then a div with 10 items. So there it is. You have to love Emmett. From that to that. Okay. And I'm just going to comment this stuff out. But that's what I want to accomplish. I need to open up my CSS. Split vertically. And then get rid of all that. And I've got a class item. And for my class item, I'm going to have a height, 100 pixels, a width, 200 pixels, a background, color, tomato, a border, 2 pixels, solid, red. Huh? Yeah, it's one of the colors you could pick. And then I have a container class, and I'm going to have display flex. And I could just, be explicit, even though that's the default. Flex direction is row. And I do need to set this because the default is no wrap, so I'm going to set it to wrap. So I've got wrap, and then I need to center it. So it's center the main axes. Row is horizontal, the main axis is horizontal. And so to center things along, to change things along the main axes, I'm going to use justify content. So I could do justify content. And that does things along the main axes. And I'll do like I did, for the question in class. I'll do space around. And so that should, it's already linked, cool. And there's what I get. So I need to add a little bit of margin in there between those guys. And so for my items, add a little margin and just do 20 pixels. That looks a little bit better. And if I wanted to, I could add down here, flex, grow, 1.
Interesting, even if you set the width and height and you do grow, it changes the item.
Mm-hmm. So MDN flex grow. And we'll get to item properties. Flex grow specifies the flex grow factor of a flex item. It specifies the amount of space inside the flex container the item should take up. Syntax, values, it's just a number. No negative numbers. Examples. That's it. Doesn't give us a lot of information. So Flexbox, some of that stuff, you just got to play with it, see how it behaves to figure out its characteristics. So that was a challenge. How many people got it?
I got some of it.
You got some of it? Cool. Awesome. That was a lot of hands. Good on you. Good on you. So I think there's some people who are doing well in this class. There's also a few people who are like, whoa, could maybe use a little assistance. So if there's anybody in here who wants to be an official teaching assistant in the class, all I do is like knight you teaching assistant and help out others. You can put it on your resume. I can't pay you anything, but you can put it on your resume. You're a teaching assistant. And that's kind of like how you start getting into things. Feel free to just talk to me after class, and then I'll let other students who might want some out-of-class tutoring know that you're available to help them out. That'll also reinforce your learning, by the way, to explain things to other people. Have to figure out, work it out. Yeah, you're interested right off the bat?
No, I was going to say...
BMWs suck. We're not on that topic anymore.
Having been a teacher's assistant and currently am a teacher's assistant and having been a tutor, I would highly recommend it. It really is a good experience.
Yeah.
And it is very interesting to see things from the other perspective. You're not looking at it so much from a student's perspective. You're looking at it from more of a teacher's perspective, and it really does reinforce whatever it is you're teaching and help you out.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So just let me know after class if you want to do that, or if you feel so impelled, you could let me know whenever, and I'll just put your email up and people can contact you who need help. Because there are some people in this class who are like reaching, and I'd like to bring them along as much as possible. Okay, so that's we learned about flex direction. So we haven't even gotten to justify content, but you guys were just working with it. So here's flex flow. So flex, same HTML, right? A lot of the same HTML. And then here's just flex flow row wrap, right? So just showing the shorthand property. There's the shorthand property, row wrap. It's a row, and it's wrapping. So I just want to demo how these run. And I like the way where I showed you the CSS and then we just looked at all of them. And so these are all row. So here we have display flex, flex direction row, flex wrap wrap. And now we're looking at justify content. Justify content moves things along the main axes, which for a row is the horizontal axis, or for a column, it's the vertical axis. So justify content, and we're looking at flex start, right? And there's no flexbox stuff in the item. It's just width, height, margin, border, background color, text align. Okay, and so it's justify content flex start, flex in. That's the only difference between those. Flex start. Well, let me highlight the same stuff so you don't see the highlight jumping. Right? Flex start and flex in, the only difference. And here, center, only difference. And here, space between, only difference. And here, space around. That's it. So flex direction row, flex wrap wrap, and then we're just setting each of the justify content to the different settings. And so when we look at those HTML files, here is flex start. Cool. Slightly different HTML. I just got 3 of them to illustrate it. Where do you think things are going to end up with flex end? They're going to be at the end. And flex center in the center. Or justify content center. And that one is that space around or space between? That's space between. Yeah, space between. It says it right up there. And here we have space around. Cool. So let's see how it behaves with the column. All right, so we have a flex direction column, flex start, flex end, flex center, space between, space around. Now it's just a column. And notice what I've also added in. I've added a height to this container. Otherwise, it'll just keep growing down and down and down, right? And I actually want to see things moving in place. Or it wouldn't move at all. It's just the container's wrapped and the start is the same as the end because the container's just wrapping tight around everything. Same as the center. So I had to make my container bigger to actually see these work. I'll show you that. So here's a flex start. Flex in, because right now justify content, that's what we're setting. And the main axis, justify content, works along the main axis. And the main axis is vertical because it's column. So flex in puts it down at the bottom. And center. And space between. And space around. Now look at what would have happened if on my CSS I hadn't had. Is that English? Hadn't had? I hadn't had height. Well, there's a, what is that? Flex start. Justify content flex start. There's flex end. And there's center. Well, hell, that didn't do nothing. Right? Why didn't it do anything? Because my container just wraps around all that stuff. Whatever the size is, that's just kind of how browsers, containers work vertically. So to actually see flex start, flex end, and center, I have to give that container a little bit of height. Well, now that's going to be wacky. And so now, okay, there's start, there's end, there's center. So you got to think about this stuff when you're doing it. And if it's not working, go, huh? Figure out why. That's justify content. Look, we're through half the files. We have align items now. With align items, flex start, flex end, center, stretch, baseline. That's all row. And then I did it again for column, flex start, flex end, center, stretch, baseline. So does line items work on the main axes or the cross axes? Line items is the cross axes. So for a row, if we set it to flex direction row, main axis is what? Which direction? Horizontal. Cross axis is vertical. So we're going to be adjusting things on the vertical axes. So let's look at the rows. We'll just preview them first. We'll do it reverse this time. Flex start. This is the line items flex start. Line items flex end. Align items center. Align items stretch. Align items baseline. The baseline of the text is all lined up. So let's look at those. 3 divs in a container. Sounds like a joke. Walk into a bar. Container says, the divs say, give us something to drink. And the bartender says, do you have a container? But first I need to justify your content. Can you show me your ID? So the divs show the bartender the ID, and he fills up their container, and then they all say, we're going to go line items horizontal. I don't know. Yeah. I just made it up. You could tell. Width, height, margin, border, background, text line, that's no flex stuff. Height 700, border, display flex, row, flex wrap, line items flex start. So, you know, if this is a row, the main axis is horizontal, cross axis is vertical, and align items does the cross axis, and we're saying flex start. So before we were looking at justify content for a column, and we were moving things up and down vertically, because there's a column, and the main axis for a column is vertical. And so to move things up and down the main axes, we use justify content. That's why things were moving vertical. Now the main axis is a row, and we still want to move things up and down vertically. And so that's the cross axis is the vertical. And to move things up and down the cross axes, we have to use align items. So line items flex start. And then only difference is flex end. So before we had flex start, now it's just flex end. Flex end. And now the only difference is, you know, I added another thing in here. Align item center. Okay. So this is a like one more deal. We have align item center. So it's row. So what affects the main axes? Align items or justify content? Justify content, right? Main axes. So I'm saying main axes, put it in the center. So across the horizontal, put it in the center. And then I say align items, and align items affects main axes or cross axes? Line items is cross axes. Align is always cross axes. And so I say center it vertically. So this is actually really hard to do with anything other than Flexbox. To vertically center something in HTML. Right? Or CSS. That's really hard to do. But with Flexbox, it's super easy. That's bam right in the middle. Right? Vertically centered with align items. Horizontally centered with justify content. I could achieve the same effect. Column. Is that going to give me the same effect? Will I get the same page by changing that from row to column? So when it's row, what centers it horizontally? Justify content. What centers it vertically? Align items. And when it's column, what centers it horizontally? Align items. And what centers it vertically? Justify content. Why, when it's columns, does justify content center it vertically? Because if it's a column, that's a vertical axis. That's the main axis. Justify content operates on the main axis. So justify content does the vertical. And align items does the cross axis, which is horizontal. I think that's going to be the same page. Whoa! Because it's a column. Right? Went from a row to a column, but it's still centered. That was cool. I like that example. So that's center, and then we have stretch. And for stretch, 700 pixels, display flex, row, flex wrap, line item stretch. I had to take out height on the item to stretch. So with height, so there's stretch, but if I have height in, height overrides stretch. So I had to take out the height. And then they all stretch. And then baseline is kind of fun. So there's my HTML. I now have IDs, start, center, and end for each of those divs. And check this out. The container, display flex, flex direction row, flex wrap wrap, align items baseline. So we're learning about align items. The item, oh my gosh. This is a flex container. It contains flex items, which are now all also flex containers. And what are the children of each of these flex containers? Well, it's the text. Those are now flex items. So each of these are a flex container. Okay, so the outer flex container is going to put all three of these flex items into a row. It's going to wrap them, and it's going to set baseline on them, align items baseline. Then each of these individual flex items are also flex containers. I'm like moving that everywhere. And I'm going to say justify content center. So if this is display flex, what's my flex direction? It's row. So my primary axis is horizontal because row is the default, right? I don't have to even set that. Here, my flex direction, row is default. Okay? So just by having, did you see that? Flex direction, row is default. Let that burn in. So here, having display flex, I already have flex direction row. So my primary axis is horizontal. Justify content operates on the primary axis. So I'm going to center that horizontally. That text has all just been centered horizontally. And for each one of those, right, for each one of these flex containers, I'm also going to do align items. Align items operates on the cross axes. The cross axis is the vertical. And so I'm going to align one up at the top, flex start vertically, one at the center vertically, and one at the end vertically. So when I look at how did that make these pages, horizontally centered, horizontally centered, horizontally centered, flex start, align items up at the top, cross axes vertical, center, cross axes, align items, and flex end, cross axes puts at the bottom. So I got those words in 3 different locations in each of those divs, and since they have baseline on them, all 3 of those containers line up the base of the text. It lines up the base of the text. Why you'd use that, I don't know. Kind of interesting. That's how it works. I'm showing you the mechanics. So I have another challenge for you, because you've listened to me yammer. And I think that's going to be quits for the day after this challenge. But my next challenge for you is to start with this HTML.
This is your index one?
Yeah, under the temp. And I'm going to take all this out. And what I want you to do is center item horizontally and vertically. Okay? So what you're going to have to do that is your container will need some height. You have to give it some height, like 700 pixels, something like that. And then item, that was weird. I thought that's how I moved code. That's not how I move code, apparently. That's how I move code. So your container needs height, and then your item is going to need some width, height, background, color, so you can actually see it. And then you're going to have to use flex of some sort to center along the main axes and on the cross axes. Do it. And then let me see it when you're done.
Just want one container?
Yes. Yeah, one item. You could do 3 if you want to play with that and fool around with row versus column for flex direction, like I was doing.